thanks for joining us and welcome back to the Startup Founders Club. Today, I'm joined by Conor Hagan from Explorate. Conor, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tony.
Mate, firstly, just a little bit about you. Explorate does both SaaS and freight forwarding. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So, personally, I'm of the freight forwarding background. So having worked for DHL, XL Freight Management, DSV, so some of the biggest freight forwarders in the world, and that's really my background. So while obviously we're a software business at our heart, really back from freight forwarding is where I've derived my passion for what I do. So, but the SaaS element and the product element and the software element of, I suppose, logistics in general has always been a passion for me. So even starting back from university into DHL, all those years ago, definitely the intersection of shipping real physical things and shipping software is, it's not too dissimilar. So yeah, that's essentially where we came up with this kind of SaaS and moving freight hybrid.
Awesome. So for the people who don't know, tell about what Explorate, the software, does, in fact.
Of course, yes. So essentially, Explorate as a software is an operating system for international freight. And we essentially, through a combination of people and technology, move freight around the world and the corresponding data. And that corresponding data is a real, I suppose, scaling opportunity in our industry. So for obviously modern software like the likes of AI and machine learning to be able to optimize, but also from a quality standpoint, logistics in general lags behind a couple of years to what software is capable of, and things like data quality, data accuracy, all of the things that come about when you start to use technology in a sector is definitely really preeminent in our industry at the moment. So essentially taking the data from our industry, making it consumable for importers and exporters so that they can build great supply chains is the core of what we do.
Yeah, amazing. And you're telling me just before that you can literally almost track any container in the world and where it's at with your software, and literally people can look up their container and go, well, where is it? And it might be different depending on who's telling them exactly where it is, but you guys can track it down to exactly where and when.
Yeah, and not only containers. So we do air freight, ocean freight, containers being part of that, but also ro-ro, so that's roll on, roll off. So when you see those big dump trucks moving around the world as well. And so really telling people or telling businesses where their freight is at any one time is a real issue. So freight forwarders being the traditional intermediary that was responsible for that, certainly for the last 60, 70 years since the container was invented. That was invented in the 50s. So since that's happened, obviously the advent of moving that information around so we know exactly where stuff is has been certainly a problem for the last decade. And as information that accompanies shipments becomes more and more complex, you need more and more complex operating systems to be able to cope with that. So essentially, yes, bare bones, we can tell you where any container is in the world with a very high degree of accuracy, more accuracy than any of our competitors. But we can also apply that same logic to air freight, to pallets inside containers, and also then to things that might move on ships or trains or trucks, and that last mile component, particularly, and with a very, very high degree of accuracy. So I'm glad that stuck with you as something that we do.
Very much, very much. It's I actually found it quite amazing when you told me that. So I think I get why you founded Explorate, because I think you're pretty strongly and emotionally invested in making logistics work. When did you do it, and what was the driving reason behind founding Explorate?
Yeah, so Explorate was founded back in 2018. So we were pre-COVID, but supply chains still had that emerging problem of we don't know where stuff is. And actually, as consumers of our industry, being importers and exporters, they're largely disconnected from how our industry works. So for me, starting that, back at that time, I want to kind of maybe paint a bit of a picture of what our industry looked like. So things like sailing schedules. So when a vessel would move from A to B, and what ports it would call along the way, that information was transmitted by PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, emails, phone calls. It was at the advent of a website called Big Schedules, which was owned by one of the shipping lines called OOCL, and that was able to tell you the origin and destination of particular sailings. It was able to tell you times with a higher degree of accuracy, although not at a peak level. And so you got to bear in mind the context for it was very manual, very offline. And our first iteration of our product and our first iteration of product market fit was being able to show schedules online in a format that importers and exporters were able to use, and then attach rates to those. So that's where exploring rates or Explorate came from.
Gotcha.
By being able to explore all the different vessels that were able to service from, let's say, China to Australia, or even USA to Europe, being able to customers being able to see that, click on that, and being able to book with shipping lines and freight forwarders. So that was where our first iteration of our product came from. And then from there, we said, okay, well, now that we have bookings sorted, we need to get into the world of operating. So the documents attached with the transaction, the different users inside companies that need to control freight, the different customers. So back into one of our first external products, which was telling even end consumers, if they bought something from one of our customers, where that product was, being able to show them an Uber-style interface for where their freight was something that was, once again, born from creating more of an operating system than a booking engine. And through that time, we've scaled from 2 guys in a shed we've got about 60 people scattered around Australia. We've got offices in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide. We've got a little office up the sunny coast. And essentially, we've scaled inside Australia. Next iteration is to bring it overseas.
That's amazing, right? That's a fantastic place to get to in what is both a long and very short period of time. I think 7 years for business. Bootstrapped or funded? Getting to 60 staff in 7 years, I'm guessing. Bit of funding there. So we started off quite bootstrapped, and we actually were facilitated by a couple of government grants as well, which was fortuitous, I think, more than anything else. And then COVID came through and really presented an opportunity for us to scale really quickly, of which we did. Obviously, the key criteria for COVID was our people, and this is our customers saying, our people are no longer in the office, so they can't take that manila folder home with them. And certainly if they do, it's not really an efficient process. So we need to get this, our supply chain online. Can you help us? So to be able to keep up with that demand, we had a lot of demand through, into 2020, 2021 in particular, and we needed to be able to fund that and fund that growth to be able to take advantage of that. So we were funded. We did a seed round with Scalata Ventures, and that was a really pivotal time in us accelerating from just being a booking engine and pivoting out into being a full-scale supply chain system. And then we took on a Series A around about 3.5 years ago now, so nearly 4 years ago. So that's essentially the funding timeline. And since then, we've always been pathway to profitability. So running profitably as a business has always been at the core of what we do. And from our side, it's not really about an exit plan or traditional venture funding, grow at all costs and revenue and users. It's always been on how we... And then IPO it.
People. What's that?
And then IPO it.
And then IPO it. But, that's still quite possible, but not something that I think people focus too much on that and don't focus enough on actually what they're trying to do for their customers or what value they're adding. So
100%.
We tend to focus on that.
Got to solve the problem for your customers, right?
Yeah, big time.
So you said that COVID really helped get your first big bouncing in clients. You work with some pretty large clients. So looking at your website and some of your case studies and testimonials, you work with people like Coates Hire, Sports Girls, Suzanne, Coopers. How do you get your first enterprise clients in particular? Did they come to you during COVID, or was it part of outreach? How did that work for you?
It was definitely part of outreach. Our customers in particular are quite used to outbound sales. So if you look at freight forwarders in general, they would have a large outbound sales team that is divvied up by geography. So go into Brisbane City and go nuts and contact all the importers and exporters in there is a very common tactic for freight forwarders to execute on.
Yep.
So for us, that outbound strategy was very natural. It was something in my history I have done as well. So it was quite easy to be able to spin up a sales team, to be able to target outbound. And, that was definitely part of the strategy. But overall, what got us the enterprise customers was our product. So by being able to merge more than one thing inside their supply chain solution was really important. So where they had a freight forwarder and maybe a janky piece of old software and 2 people running spreadsheets and 3 people running accounts and trying to reconcile invoices and quotes and all this sort of stuff that generally accompanies using a freight forwarder, by being able to strip all that out and being able to demonstrate that with a couple of early customers, that really then propelled us into then enterprise customers. And they kind of heard from us from word of mouth. So I think Coach Hire was one of our earlier ones. And their supply chain is not simple. You know, it's not, hey, buy something from overseas and sell it in Australia. They have to hire out vehicles. They have to, you know, sweat assets. They've got to import from maybe Japan and then re-export over to Europe. There's quite a complex supply chain there. So by being able to make certain things simple, and we were able to attract them quite easily. And then the real thing with delivering enterprise customers is providing value as quickly as possible. So being able to get the bare bones freight forwarding done, so that was set and forget, to be able to improve their supply chain one incremental bit at a time and continue to show up and do that, just made them really, really sticky. And we still have them to this day. So from almost, let's say, 6 odd years ago when we signed them, they're still a very happy customer and one that we're very proud to power the supply chain. So I think if people are looking for advice on this, or you want to kind of get your first enterprise deal, it's really about getting out, getting in front of these customers and telling them what you're doing. Tell them what you want to do for them and why they're important to you. That's how you sign. I think that's how 90% of enterprise customers get sold.
Nice. You mentioned that you're proud to have them as a customer. You must be pretty proud of the platform to be able to do that level of logistics management for an enormous company with that level of complexity. You got to be pretty proud of the work you and the team you put in on that. Yeah,
definitely. You got to think, only maybe, let's say 5 odd years ago, we were struggling to get by, SaaS only model, really from a revenue standpoint. While we had a couple of really good customers, we didn't really provide that value. And it took a good 2 years for us to really get a strong value proposition from our product as standalone, rather than hopes and dreams of like, we would love to do this for your supply chain. We would love to do this for you as a business. Turning that into reality is really, really difficult. So definitely a lot of pride, especially in those early days, that we were able to get product market fit. And I suppose from a team now, the way your product then evolves over time shouldn't stop. You shouldn't take that kind of perspective and lose it. You should take it, double down and triple down on it. So for me and the team, I'm incredibly proud of the team and the product that we've put together, because at the end of the day, it went from shipping no containers to now powering, at any one time, we've got about 2,500 odd shipments on the go. That's around about 5,000 containers, maybe between 3,500 and 5,000 containers at any one time, that we're just balancing in the air, and the product and people are doing all of that. And to have 50 odd people, or 60 odd people being able to manage all of that at any one time is crazy. Like it's a very, it's a very impressive beast that we have put together. I certainly can't claim credit for it all, but I am, definitely very proud. So
you should claim credit for it all. That's what.
I do 95% of that. So.
Awesome, mate. One of the things that we wanted to talk about today, and you and I were talking about this a little while ago, is clearly you've got an innovative product, you're an innovative guy, and we're going to talk about innovation. And one of the things that you said to me when we were talking about what we were going to talk about on today's podcast is earning the right to innovate. You said to me that I think you have to earn the right to innovate. What do you mean when you say that?
I definitely, believe that, and it's certainly my bias of how I've got to where I'm at that leads me to say that you have to earn the right to innovate. And probably, once again, biased by the fact that I think in our industry in particular, and B2B in particular, it takes a long time to get up to speed with the status quo. If you're Uber or maybe Airbnb, everybody's taken a taxi. Everybody understands the complexity that comes with that. Everybody has, been on holidays. And I think there's a big step difference, especially in the world of B2B, in terms of being able to do that in our world. So from a B2B standpoint, I certainly think from a innovation perspective, having innovation at the core of what you do is incredibly important, but it is not something where you just get to do that and that's all you get to do. We're just going to be an innovative company and do innovative things, I think is certainly for me bookended. And I would say you have a required function to be able to do what you're required to in your industry to an incredibly high standard. And that for me is something that you have to earn the right to do. And if you are a B2B business at all, SaaS or otherwise, your reputation, your ability to do these things to a high quality will be judged, and they're judged by customers almost every single day. So earning the right to have that respect, to be able to innovate, comes off the back of that, not before that. And that's the way I look at it, probably more.
You almost say that it's the boring things that matter first, like the business as usual, the processes that everyone depends on. That if you can't do that, then you can't really service your customers.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to boil it down to that, which I think is actually very true, it's probably why we're successful. Like, if we want to be real with ourselves, very few people are passionate about supply chains, and if they are, like, that's a pretty weird thing. And I suppose for me, I did biotech at university, and I'm not afraid of learning, and I certainly take learning as one of my core skill sets. But honestly, being passionate about supply chain is rare. Like, it is very rare. So to take the boring bit of your statement and kind of correlating that with supply chain being very boring to most people, I'd say, sure, be good at the boring bits, but be passionate about it too. It doesn't preclude you being really good at what you do. I think a lot of people get really, really good at what they do, and then they get attritioned out and they go, oh, it's really hard, this is really terrible, our industry's awful. Just remember why you do it, and being passionate about it honestly gets you through 90% of it. So not only being good at what's boring, being passionate about what's boring too. Not very inspirational. Don't go home and tell your kids to do that, but I think it's maybe part of our secret sauce.
I don't know. Maybe go home and do tell your kids to be about that. Do the little things right. Like, when I said boring, it's kind of a bit tongue in cheek. Like, you know me. I love running operational efficiency for fabrication and construction workshops and things like that. No one's passionate about that stuff. Doing your timesheets, recording your purchase orders, recording your stuff. Like, same thing, right? I'm still passionate about that stuff because it makes the difference. Like, because if you don't do that basic stuff, everything falls apart, right? And then you can do the fun stuff on top of that.
Yeah, what an inspirational podcast we have here. It's like, hey guys, go out, do the most boring thing possible and keep doing it until you're passionate about it.
And be passionate about it.
That's where success lives.
Well, on the basis for that, is that how you earn the right to innovate? You got to do that first. Like, because one of my next questions for you is, how do you earn the right to innovate? Is that it? Is that how you earn the right?
I mean, once again, I'd hate for people to feel like they have to do hard things to be able to do good things. But honestly, a lot of the time it does go hand in hand. And I think there's probably a mix of both. You can't continuously do hard things that are boring and then expect to be able to not attrition out. But you have to be able to find. So as an example, I'll give you some examples of what I mean by this, because I think it'll help bring it into life rather than just be us talking about, what's boring and what's not boring. We go and we do vessel tours quite consistently with our staff and also with our companies that utilize our software and our services. And we bring them on a vessel, and that might not seem very exciting to most people, but if you ever pull alongside a container ship and it's as high as a skyscraper and you're walking up the equivalent of a ladder up a skyscraper, and then you get on there and there's a group of people who've been on there for 6 months and they're all very excited to see you, and then they want to show you I'm proud of their town, and you go into the engine room and it has pistons that are 5 meters wide, and they have cranes inside a vessel, and you see people are working in really hot conditions 24/7 because they can't get off the vessel. They've got swimming pools inside, but once again, it's not like you're at the Ritz-Carlton. It's just a little plunge pool, and you go up to the deck and you see the captains, and that's how you get a bit of passion. You go, hang on 1 second, and this is incredible. And you see containers getting loaded in and out, and they're on cranes that are moving so incredibly fast. I don't know how they do it. All of that kind of connection to the real things that power our industry kind of, for me, becomes worth it. And imagine as a seafarer, and that's something I'm very passionate is, welfare of seafarers. As a seafarer, not a lot of people have exposure to that. When we go on these vessels, we might be the first people who've been on their vessel in a month. And you can just imagine that like 12 times a year you get visitors. It's not a very social existence. So we take a lot of pride in that. And I think that then gives you renewed passion to go and do your work. So it doesn't seem like you're, having to do the boring stuff to have to innovate all the time or earning the right because you've wrote, 17 lines of code or shipped 25 shipments and got all the documents 100% correct. Sometimes it just takes getting on a vessel and, understanding that's my container. I've just moved that, and that has powered this whole thing that I'm now sitting on. Is incredible. So I think looking for the impact in the boring is maybe probably something that might help people earn the right to innovate.
Completely agree. I remember I was driving along for us. I had a very similar thing. I don't get to go on awesome ships, but I was driving past a construction site, and it was one of our clients' cranes that was on the construction site, parked next to one of our clients' construction generators on the construction site, and the building was being done by one of our clients as a builder. I'm like, that is amazing. And I had to stop and pull over and take a photo. And I'm like, I probably shouldn't be pulling over here, but I'm going to, because it's awesome. Because you see that and you go, all of these people are using our software to do this thing. And there's a building going up because of doing the boring things right, kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I spoke at a conference recently as well, and one of our companies that we ship for is Merry People, and they do amazing boots. A big shout out to Merry People. They do, these very comfortable wellies, and I mean that's probably an Irish way of saying gumboots, but they do amazing footwear for especially for getting wet and whatever else, and farming. And I brought a couple back to Ireland, and so now they've scaled. They're over in the USA and they are in the UK. But I was at an event and I said, we ship for the likes of like Merry People boots, and then you get people going woo from the background going and they're like hanging their boots up alongside their heads. And you kind of go, okay, well, geez, you just have to step in a room and mention a customer and they're there. Like, I find that sort of stuff very inspiring. And that's off the back of the success of Merry People, not us, but certainly something that we're very passionate about as well. And it sounds like you are too. So it's not hard to derive the passion. It's just, once again, hard to sometimes see the forest through the trees when you're stuck knee deep in rego documents or whatever it might be. That's something that,
for us, it's calculating the FIFO landed cost of stock movements with off purchase order attributed landed costs with customs duty.
But you did that, and as a result,
exactly,
customers' equipment is
exactly.
So there you go.
So, like, we both love innovation. We know you got to build it on the stuff. If you didn't build an innovative product, no one's buying it. No one's moving away from the status quo if you don't have a level of innovation.
Yes.
So, do you think sometimes we focus on it too early, or do we focus on it too late in the startup world? I
think good startups find that timing, and a lot of success is around timing. You can have fantastic years and terrible years from a numbers and a revenue perspective, and it mightn't even always add up. You have certain things that perform well and certain things that perform badly, and that's kind of the way of life with all businesses, startups, scale-ups, tech businesses, or otherwise. But I think when it comes to if you innovate too early or innovating too late, I definitely think that has like context has everything to do with that. In the context of your customers, of your expectations for your business and your industry. My expectations of my industry are incredibly high. I expect our industry to get immeasurably better over the next decade. And I want to play a driving force in that, especially when it comes to Australia. And I think there's a bunch of different emerging factors for that. And I think Australia in particular, from a place perspective, is really good for innovation, especially in supply chain. We have biosecurity. We've got a lot of interesting things as an island nation. But I think in terms of timing of innovation, I'd hate to put a bar, not I'd hate to, but it's certainly I've seen people who've innovated too early, and I've seen people who've innovated too late. And I think timing is almost everything. So continuously building your innovation mechanism, continue to build out your value proposition. And as a result of that, the innovation you use to get those things is probably, focused innovation rather than just innovating for innovation's sake. And I think that's probably where my gripe is, people and businesses wanting to innovate because we need to be seen to be innovative. I think you either you have an innovative way of operating your value proposition, or you don't innovate.
Yeah. So you've got to marry the practical with the innovative at the same time. So if you're too early and you're trying to innovate too early, you don't have enough of the practical. If you're purely practical with no innovation, there's no movement for somebody to come to you. So you've really got to marry up that practical and innovative in a pretty tight time frame.
But there are businesses that operate completely outside of that too. And you have the likes of Canva and some others who have done incredibly well off the back of having that, I would say, constraint or practicality removed. And I think there definitely is a space for that. I just think B2B somewhat constrained there because a lot of people don't buy into the potential. They have to buy into the result. Yeah. And I think that that's the harsh reality of B2B businesses, is that's what you get judged on. You don't get judged on, oh, well, it's, you know, it's only X, Y, it's only $10 or $5. Generally speaking, in B2B world, transactions get quite large quite quickly. Consequences of doing it wrong can be quite enormous and detrimental to an entire business, which is an ecosystem of people and responsibilities. So I think that stands true, especially in B2B. When it's B2C, if you want to put innovation at the forefront of what you do and you think that your innovative way of looking at the world can force change, well, then for sure, just throw practicality at the window and go for your life. I believe in that wholeheartedly. So I just think it's probably a balancing act, like much other things. Like I definitely think it's horses for courses.
Yeah, context is everything. But yeah, I think I agree with you entirely there. And it is very different B2B versus B2C. And I'm not an expert B2C. I think I'm barely an expert low level in B2B after however many years I've been doing B2B stuff. But yeah, B2C, I think it's
don't sell yourself short, Tony.
Different beast. So controversial one.
Yep.
Lots of government programs, accelerators, and universities, they run innovation programs.
Yeah.
Do you think it's actually viable to run an innovation program or program innovation as a standalone concept?
I think as a standalone concept, no. I think you need a high driver. So if you're doing it in a university or a government level, I think there has to be a purpose and a lead. So somebody somewhere has to make the call on, we're being innovative because these things. And we're going to put skin in the game because it's going to be led by this person. And we're going to take this as an opportunity rather than a thing we need to do. And I think if you look, bringing it back to to what I said earlier, I think it's definitely more about making sure you have the right outcome and reason for innovation rather than just doing innovation for innovation's sake. And I think, once again, I'm not an expert at this side because, to be honest, I've never ran an innovation program. I've never been part of an innovation program inside a government. Yes, I have received grant funding from a federal and state level at a very low level, and had to be held accountable for my innovations and what I'm bringing to my business in the context of those grants. But I think if we look at it wholeheartedly as innovation programs inside big institutions and corporations, I've seen it go wrong lots of times. I've seen it go right a few times, but I think there's a lot of innovation circus that sometimes accompanies innovation at its core. And that's probably the thing that really turns me off innovation in big corporates or institutions, when it turns into a bit more of a circus than something that is useful and practical. And the reasons why I have a bias and probably I'm averse to those things, because I know how hard it is to actually do the real innovation stuff. And so when you have innovation circus happening next to it and startup competitions and a bunch of stuff like that, it really doesn't sit well with me, and personally is something I try to steer clear of.
Yeah, I totally understand. I mean, and agree. Most importantly, I think for me, I think you can't innovate without a problem statement or a problem that you're trying to solve and a desired outcome, and a novel way of getting there. Like you can't just go, all right, today we're going to do some innovation. Like on what?
Well, you've built a pretty fantastic business, and I suppose from your side, like, what have you seen that in that kind of bigger side, even from your customers or from maybe your ecosystem? Have you ever seen it work?
No. My most hated phrase that I ever get from a corporate or government, whatever, is that our team runs just like a startup. They don't. They don't. They don't. They don't. Go away. Thank you. This conversation. No, like no, I've never seen it work, because it's in most times in those larger corporate environments, whether it's government, whether it's large bureaucracies of big companies or universities or not-for-profits, you are wildly constrained by the innovation you can make by rules, process, procedure, levels of regulation, and the interconnectedness of everything that you've got to go through to get there. So I've never seen it work well. The best way that I've actually seen it work is when big companies or businesses and governments, councils, whatever, go to companies and go to market and say, hey, we've got a problem.
Yep.
Will you please help us solve it? And that's when I think it can work.
Yeah.
But yeah, the innovation theater, I think that's a phrase that you said when we were talking a little while ago, and it really just struck a horrendously painful chord with me. And I'm like, yep, yep. Today, it's Tuesday, it's Innovation Day. So.
I get it, but I mean, and I've seen it work to different degrees, and I think maybe to synthesize some of the stuff that you were saying as well, that big corporates engaging innovative businesses or innovative ideas in a more, let's say, concise and meaningful way. I think that's where innovation inside big businesses could live, which is what innovations exist. How can we best utilize these things? And I think AI as an emerging trend, and probably started with buzzword, there is definitely value there for businesses. It's actually changed the way that people now look at software. It's like people are using ChatGPT in our business every day. How do we offset that? I was with a big four consulting company yesterday, not for anything other than just having a bit of back and forth. And they were saying they have ChatGPT specific for their business, and they have spent about a couple of $1 billion on this to get this in their business, and they find that their staff are using ChatGPT outside of that constraint. Just and it's really perplexing to see how that could be brought into workflows. So I just think is a very interesting case there that is emerging in the world, which is consumers are very, very open to adopting new technology, and businesses and big corporations are now honestly trying to put effort to adopt and try and follow suit and see how they can get a piece of that game. And for me, I think that that's going to be something that will hopefully then have innovation departments spurred on to become that innovation embracement department, which is there's innovations all around the place. How do we make it work in business? And it's less about us being innovative and about us embracing innovation, embracing technology. Because a lot of the I think innovations that have happened in the last decade in particular are more software and technology oriented. So I'd love to see that being the driving force for the next decade. And I'm certainly seeing the early shoots of it. So I'm very excited to see if that goes.
So more the adoption and integration of innovation into existing systems rather than just trying to innovate internally, potentially.
Yeah, certainly part of a mandate. I think if I'm looking at, let's say I'm a bigger business, but this is the thing, like you get to the size of Amazon and they're still like every day is day one. So they've baked it in from the start. It's part of their business. Innovation is at their core. And arguably it's a titan of a business. It's in every country and it does really well. So from our side, how do we, I would hate to lose that, and I put a big focus on never losing that. But if I'm a big corporate now and I'm looking at my innovation team, I look at two things. How innovative can we be? And that's can we actually be, not what innovations exist and how do we do them? It's how innovative can we be? And what exists in terms of innovation, and how can we use that? And that's kind of my mandate at a high level for innovation teams. But once again, not having run one of these teams, not having been in an environment for one of these teams to have existed, I'm kind of speaking out of school there.
No, we all we're founders. We speak out of school all the time.
Speak out of school, drop out of school, get expelled from school, all those things.
So to give governments, corporates, universities their due, the reason that they run these innovation programs, right, is to try and generate more design thinking, innovative thinking, to help people build new startups. That's the intent behind it, right? How do you think they could do that better, or in a way that actually encourages more applicable innovation, or businesses that actually have a chance of succeeding by doing something innovative, practical and innovative? How do you think we can do those programs better?
Honestly, I think it's about rapid iteration, and I've seen a bunch of things, that are starting to emerge without kind of diving too deep. But I think that as an innovative business, and you would know this as well, you do a lot of iterative building. So you build in iterations, you have time definite tasks, you succeed or fail quite a lot. I think the failure criteria is not discussed enough in big businesses, and everything is looked at how successful can this be, what can we deliver in terms of ROI. I would argue the better way to try and drive the right type of innovation is how many times have you failed in the last quarter, and tell me about those failures and what do we learn and what do we do next. And I think that's pretty much the secret sauce of all good high performing technology businesses, is their ability to rapidly iterate, build a bunch of stuff, be able to put that in the bin at certain stages. So if you're Apple, you know how many products they've put in the bin over the years. The same with Google, and I think they've fully left the social media chat, which is great. But you have
Google Plus account. Oh no.
Or my Google chat, right? There's a bunch of different things that certainly, big software companies still today innovate themselves out of.
Yeah.
And I think innovation departments are always trying to make their core innovation idea work in perpetuity forever, and it's very unhealthy. It should be, how many innovation ideas do you have, what progress has been made on those, and which ones have we put in the bin? And there should be an order of magnitude of each one of those. So hey, we start off with 10 innovation ideas, we have 10 innovative ideas now. 2 were the original ones. We have 1 that's progressed into another one. We have 2 that we merged together, and then the rest we put in the bin and we've replaced them with some more. That should be the way you measure innovation in a business, is your ability to be able to build that mechanism. And I once again don't have the exposure, speaking slightly out of school. I haven't seen one exist, but if anyone listens to this and they're out there and they're part of something like that, I'd love to talk to them about how they're engaging then, local innovative businesses. And Explorate aside, because I'm very passionate about innovative businesses, especially in Australia, I definitely think that as a big corporate, you should be thinking about those type of things, whether you're government, whether you're, in big corporates in Australia, banking, whatever it might be. I definitely will be looking at my innovation departments like that.
Awesome, mate. Thank you. Huge amount to discuss or digest there from what we've discussed. As we wrap up, I've got 3 questions that I like to ask every founder that's come on, because I think they can be terrifying in their answers to some people. Okay. So I'll throw them to you.
Prepare to be disappointed.
What is the biggest misconception first-time founders have about starting a SaaS company?
That they're going to raise a bunch of money and be rich.
Cool. Pretty straight up. Does it happen that way?
Sure. Yeah. I've raised a bunch of money, and I definitely think that's a common misconception. But honestly, if that's what you're in it for, it certainly wasn't my driving ideal. I've met a bunch of very successful founders, and all of them are very mission driven and very passionate about what they do. I think find the passion first, go for that. But I've seen that happen sometimes, and then the other bit happen quite a few times as well.
Yeah. In terms of your journey, what was the biggest mistake that you've made on your journey building Explorate?
Oh, the biggest mistake I made building Explorate, I think the biggest mistake. It's hard to define like the quantities of big. Yeah. I think the most topical one is always you try and keep everybody happy, and that goes home life. It goes into employees. So you're trying to keep all your staff, and you're trying to make everybody absolutely the best they can be. And there's only so much of that you can do as a founder while also being the best that you can be. So without sounding too, be the best you can be about it. I definitely think that was an early and still a perpetual failing of mine, is not knowing when to rebalance. And people talk about work-life balance. It's never like that. It's never you just doing that. Sometimes you be this way. Sometimes you got to be this way. And I think being okay with that divergence of balance at certain stages without trying to keep everything happy and everything going is probably one of the biggest learnings I've had.
Awesome. I like that one. And the last one is, what is the one piece of advice you feel strongly enough about to give to every single founder?
jump in 2 feet first and go as hard as you can. That is, if you really think you've earned the right to innovate, if you think you have something that you need the world to do, firstly, don't keep it private. I think a lot of times early founders like, I can't tell anyone. Ooh, I'll tell you this, but sign an NDA. Don't, like, it's all about the doing. So if you believe it that much, don't try and convince everybody. If you've convinced yourself, jump in 2 feet first and give it everything you got. And if you fail after that, at least you can sleep well. You've given it everything. You went full in. You didn't kind of half do it. Just go and do it.
Perfect. Mate, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on here, and hopefully people got a bit out of it, and I'll look forward to watching Explorate continue to grow over the next few years.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Conor.
See you, mate.
Bye.